Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Colony Drop. My name is Brian.
And my name is Isaac. This is your favorite Gundam podcast where we talk about everything from anime series and Gundam movies to Gunpla, which are Gundam models, Gundam lore, concepts, ideas, anything and everything that is in the great Gundam universe.
That's right, Isaac, and today we're back. We're going to finish off our series review of New Mobile Report Gundam Wing. So we're back for more listeners after that bloodbath. What was your thought going into the back half, Isaac?
Let me just say, Ryan, and I think I speak for you as well when I say today is almost a celebratory day because it means we never have to watch Gundam Wing again. For the rest of our lives. Because, oh my God, I was so glad to wrap up this story. So many unexpected, and not in a good way unexpected either, just out of left field, I should say, things happen. And I'm just left scratching my head wondering, why is this series so loved? It can't fully be just pulled along by the weight of a female fan base. It's just puzzling overall. And dare I say, blandly painful at times to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I disagree. But before we continue the bloodbath, to your point, I do think it's loved. Again, kind of like because what we talked about last week. This was like the first big mecha show on Cartoon Network back when anime was starting to get really popular, right? I mean, there were some before that, I think earlier in the 90s, but I don't think they were on Cartoon Network. Like, I don't remember where I watched Techno Man, but I don't know. Right. Anime wasn't as big back then, but that's what I think's pulling it, Isaac. I mean, this was the first time people saw a Gundam or a Gundam-like thing, and it was great.
Yeah. And now nostalgia is just holding down the fort, right? Like everybody that saw it back in the 90s or early 2000s, whatever, now they just view it through nostalgic lenses.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I wonder if we'll have that reaction to other series that we go back and rewatch. However, we have gone back and rewatched some already, and I did not have this strong of a reaction to those series. So maybe it's just something unique to this series. So it's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah. Doubling down on what happened before, I think this is just a case of bad writing, planning, and overall not a great experience, unless for whatever reason you really got captivated by all the pointless philosophizing about, the purpose of a soldier and, total pacifism and all that stuff.
Isaac, are you not on board with total pacifism? Because everyone in this show is on board with total pacifism, even though they failed to communicate that to each other.
Brian, I'm on Team Dermail. I don't know about you. I like that scene where he's meeting with Relena. I think right after she's like chosen as a leader, and she wants to like immediately demilitarize Oz, I think, and Romefeller. And he just kind of stands up and like, those are very naive ideas. We have like these guerrillas in other countries and freedom fighters, and some countries are gonna like start small wars. Like, we can't get rid of our military overnight.
But before we continue the bloodbath, listeners, Isaac and I randomly had two unrelated Gundam Wing sort of encounters in our life in the last week. So I think we were going to share them just to support the fact that Gundam Wing has left a lasting impression on the United States fan base. Here we are 25 years later from release, and then I guess, 20, 21, 22-ish years later from release in America. So Isaac, you wanna go first?
Sure. Brian, we can't escape Gundam Wing. I was at the gym today, and a fellow gym goer was wearing a Gundam Wing shirt. It was like a sort of cyan-colored shirt, and on it had in white the schematics for Wing Zero. So I was looking at it, and I was like, of course I'd run into this on the day I'm recording the last half episode podcast for Gundam Wing. So yeah, that was my encounter. I didn't talk to the guy. I was just kind of like, I don't know. It was just like, you know what? I apparently can't escape this. So I went on with my day, frustrated.
Little did he know that you were using the rage of watching Gundam Wing to fuel you that day at the gym.
Yep. No pre-workout for me. I just my anger at the series as I moved weights.
Yeah, so my experience, I was talking to a fellow dad. So this is what you do when you have kids, people. You talk to the other parents because that's really the only people you end up talking to, whoever the parents of the other kid is that your kid's playing with. And for whatever reason, we were talking about our cars being broken into. And I used to have a car, and it was broken into 3 times over the course of like 6 years.
Wow.
Maybe 10 years. I don't know. But the last time it was broken into, I think I may have told this story on the podcast before, but I had a Master Grade High New Gundam and maybe the Re 100 Nightingale in my trunk. And I hadn't taken them upstairs to my apartment because those boxes are very big. I don't know if you've ever seen those in person, but they're very large. And anyway, I was telling this guy that he's like, "Oh, did they steal anything from your car?" And I said, "Yeah, they stole these things I had in the trunk." And like, I didn't know if this guy was a Gundam fan or, what am I supposed to say? So I said, "Oh, they stole these models." It sounded really strange, right? Because I was like, "Well, I had these models in my trunk, and then they stole those." And he's like, "Oh, like model planes?" And I was like, "No," I was like, "They're like model robots." He's like, "Oh, like Gundam Wing," and I was like, "Yeah, like Gundam Wing."
He was like, "Oh, were they Leos?"
Yeah, it was like kind of something like that.
Like, "Yep, my perfect grade Leo got stolen."
Yeah, so that in my head I was like, there it is. That's why this show is popular, because it hooked an entire generation on Gundam, and that's probably what a lot of people think Gundam is, right? Gundam Wing. So, and nothing wrong with that, If you're a Gundam Wing fan, again, you're just not gonna like this episode. More power to you.
I beg to differ. There's a lot wrong with it because there's better Gundam shows than Gundam Wing.
Well, it depends though, right? I think it's actually okay if they're a Gundam Wing fan, because then they would want to watch more Gundam because they like it.
Would they?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If they liked the show, then they would be more likely to check out more Gundam. Like if they see, Hathaway on Netflix, they'd probably watch it just because it was Gundam.
Brian, my theory is Gundam Wing fans went on to become 00 fans.
Oh, I think that's highly likely. I mean, 00 is basically redoing, is like a newer version of Wing.
And they love the movie.
Right, could be.
They can't get enough of it.
Just those spindly metallic aliens, they just love it.
The ELSs.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's my thought. I think it's only bad if they didn't like Gundam Wing, because then they would never watch Gundam again, right? They'd be like, "Oh, I don't like Gundam. I saw that."
Unless it's Gundam Wing. They only tuned in for Endless Waltz.
Yeah. So I tried to encapsulate my thought on the back half in a paragraph. You ready for this?
Wow. Oh, I'd love to hear it. How poetic. Proceed.
So overall, I thought the back half was more engaging than the first half, particularly the last 5 to 6 episodes, which I think were great by the series standards. That said, I'm not sure the logic of how we got there made any sense, as the back half pivots to a new enemy that's not even mentioned in the first half, which sort of cheapens some of the development in the first half. And then, when it's all said and done, the lesson to take away from this series here, folks, is that communication is key, because it turns out that all the characters wanted the same thing in the end, which is total pacifism. We just had to watch them all switch sides a few times and fight about it for a while until someone live streamed it on worldwide Twitch for the world, and everyone was like, "Okay, I guess we should stop now."
Brian, would you say just communication is key? Oh,
hey! There it is.
Zing!
The answer was in the opening the entire time.
Yeah, if only we had just communication. If only we had rhythm emotion.
Yeah. Isaac, we didn't mention the music last time, which may be the best thing about this show. The openings are great.
Yeah, that and the ending.
Well, yeah.
And the fact that it ends and it never returns.
We did finally get Rhythm Emotion in the back half. I think it was episode 40. I wasn't expecting it to come that late.
What's weird is we never had the sort of halfway little montage change, right, throughout the show. The end credits never changed. Right. Usually in anime series, especially Gundam, like there's a whole new song at the midway point.
Yeah, it was strange. It was like 39 episodes of one and then 9, I think, of the new one.
49 episodes of the same end credits music with, Relena in the forest for whatever reason.
Just looking cute among all that grass or whatever.
There she goes. But yeah, so Brian, can you pull our audience along, for those of us that haven't seen it or forgot, what the last half of this series entails as far as plotline?
Oh man, some days I think I remember, and then other days I think I forget, because it's all just sort of twisted. The back half starts out still focused on Oz.
The Gundam pilots are in space now, I think. Oz is doing its, diplomacy in space. Its little smiles and handshakes campaign with Lady Un.
Right. Oz has won over the space colonies. At the end, Zechs kind of went back to the Sanc Kindom, and our heroes sort of pivot to protecting the Sanc Kindom for a while at the same time, Duke de Mail has this ongoing chess match with Relena, where he decides to one-up her by electing her. They call her the Queen of the World or something ridiculous, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and then that kind of backfires on him, and sort of he loses control. And then the colonies all this time are pissed, right? Because they've been invaded by the Alliance, and a new faction breaks out, Isaac, called the White Fang, which is basically the colony rebellion group that doesn't want to live under Oz.
What's weird is, if you remember when we first get White Fang's reveal, I think it's on the moon, right? A bunch of agents in Oz uniforms, they take Tuberov captive.
Right, yep.
They say we're the remnants of the Treize faction, something like that, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And I remember that was so bizarre. That came out of left field. That what the heck is Treize faction troops doing, saying that they're with the colonies? Did they just sort of merge together? That wasn't done very well, I thought, or explained well.
I took that it could have meant a few things. One, that they had previously joined the Treize faction, and they had just happened to be stationed in the colonies. That maybe not necessarily that they started with Oz, but when there was the, infighting in Oz, that they joined the Treize faction because they didn't want DeMail's, version of Oz.
Right.
Or that, I forgot what the other option was, but...
Or that the writing was so poor, they originally wanted White Fang to kind of be this reborn Treize group, and then like a third of the way through, they were like, you know what, maybe it should actually be just a colonist uprising.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So then we focus on White Fang for a while, and then it sort of devolves into this Earth versus space conflict, and Oz sort of loses outer space, White Fang gains outer space, and then because Oz is now weak on Earth, like Treize rises to power again, and then Zechs or Miliardo, whatever you want to call him, he eventually takes control of White Fang, and then it ends up being Treize's faction versus Zechs's faction at the end in an Earth versus space duel, which is not something you would have seen just based on the beginning of the series. Yeah, and then we kind of wrap it up, and everyone agrees to live peacefully. That's the 2-minute version.
Those are the broad strokes, and I have to say that's pretty much what I remember. Yeah.
I don't know, Isaac. I got a bunch of questions.
Oh boy.
Should we try to go through it in order? How do you think we should tackle this?
Brian, I think we have questions, notes, and things we observed. I say we just do it. We just go down it. Hit me with your questions. Let's discuss.
Okay, so at the very beginning of the back half, Relena is at a table now, and she's with a bunch of important people on Earth, and she's saying, important sounding things, and they all clap like she's spewing some revelatory, stuff here. She wants assistance from other nations. I was trying to think, this is not realistic at all, and then I stopped myself, and I was like, is it? Have we had anything like this in the real world? Who's the closest real world analog to Relena? Is it Malala? Or Greta, what's her name? Thunberg?
Right, yeah. You might be right there. Yeah, right. Almost just a idealistic, not puppet, but not even a mouthpiece, but a speaking, not naive, but hopeful person that everybody kind of rallies around.
Yeah, how often does someone that young get the mic in that important of a circumstance?
Well, you just named two people from the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So pretty common at the present moment. But, we also have to keep in mind Relena has some weight because it looks like everybody in Oz really knows who she is.
Yeah, so that's true.
As far as they're concerned, she's one of the group, so they're willing to listen to her. Plus, she's so young. All of them seem really old. I can't think of any other women her age within Oz that have the same clout.
Right, yeah.
Right? Not even Dorothy, really. And her dad, or her grandfather's Dermail.
Right.
Dorothy seemed kind of invisible despite being someone that seems power hungry to an extent.
Oh, yeah. Well, Dorothy she was a new character that kind of popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, she might be too open about her, intentions. And I guess if you're in Dermail's camp, nobody really views you as a hopeful person, right?
True, yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of plausible that they would, piggyback on her being such a celebrity at this point, an icon for peace in the new world they're trying to build, because Romefeller's propaganda, or at least their stated purpose even internally, is we're going to build peace, but we're going to do it with robotic death machines. Once we seize the world militarily, and then the colonies via handshakes and smiles.
Yeah, so once I decided that I guess what she was doing was plausible, I kind of stopped giving the series crap for it, but It still did seem like a little bit of a reach. But yeah, I mean, she engages in this, 30 episode long chess match with Romefeller. She says I don't necessarily dislike Romefeller, but they need to correct their mistakes. And I was like, well, that kind of means you don't like them.
Yeah, at that point, I'm like, well, haven't they done nothing but mistakes if you believe in total pacifism?
Yeah.
They're essentially just a weapons corporation
right.
with funny clothes. That's about it that I gathered.
Exactly. Yeah, and so after this conference, this is kind of the part of the show where we pivot to protecting the Sanc Kindom. Hero and Catra turn out to be alive on a beach, and Hero's like, Catra, you should go play with the dogs. And then Catra literally goes and plays with some dogs. That was very odd. But they they eventually like make it to the Sanc Kingdom. Noin's there. Sally shows up too, and Sally's like fully on board with the Gundam Boy agenda. And on their way to the Sanc Kingdom, Hiro and Catra, they land on this carrier, and they take it over by themselves. Like they just rush in and take over the whole aircraft carrier.
Of course.
Hiro jumps out of the plane like early, rolls out, and just starts shooting everybody. And he like never gets injured. And then they, not only do they take the carrier over, Isaac, but they force everyone on the carrier to evacuate in the lifeboats. How is that possible?
I mean, who knows what requirements Oz now has on their carrier? Maybe they're like, well, we can't have any weapons. There's been too many internal rebellions.
Yeah. There's so many philosophical lines being spewed, Isaac. You know, for us, I guess the meaning of life is surviving battles. The battlefield is the only place we are allowed to live. I think Hiro said those. Sally and Noin are together. They're sort of figuring out that they both know the Gundam Boys. Sally's sort of on this mission in the back half of the show to collect all the missing Gundams. She gives wing to Noin. She's going to go look for Sandrock and Heavy Arms, which are still on Earth at this point, I'm pretty sure. I've lost track a little bit, Isaac. We went back and forth so many times.
Right, yeah. Plus the upgrade and all that. It's a whirlwind. The upgrades also themselves were never sizable enough to make a big difference visually.
Yeah, so some of the upgrades like were good. So like Death Scythe and Shenlong became Ultron. But then, yeah, like, I don't know, maybe like Sandrock and Heavy Arms models didn't sell very well because their upgrades kind of sucked. They gave Sandrock a gun, and that was kind of it.
Yeah, finally. They gave it the smallest gun.
Yeah, couldn't they just make him another gun, like the Heavy Arms gun?
Right. I mean, I know they're all from different colonies, and they all had their different approaches, but I don't know. So I feel like Sandrock was already good enough with like its head guns.
They just need a lot of ammo.
I guess, but I mean, it never relies on shooting anyways, so.
True. Sometimes in this show, Isaac, people say really obvious things, like Relena's butler. At some point he says, I have a problem believing anything the Romefeller Foundation says. And I was like, dude, we're on episode like 30 here. Are you just realizing that?
Maybe he was biting his tongue like for a while, you know, because he's like, he's a butler. He's been in business for a while. Has decades of service. And now he finally feels like he can speak his tongue now that Relena's really become first Queen Peacecraft and then, you know, Queen of the World and all that.
True, yeah. So still on their journey to the Sanc Kingdom, Isaac, Hiro and Catra get caught up in this sort of conflict in the jungle. And Catra doesn't want Hiro to fight, but he's fighting anyway. Catra walks away, which is just a great example of how the Gundam Boys are not on the same page until basically the last, 5 episodes of the show. Was that frustrating for you to watch?
Yeah, also, I was, really scratching my head, well, I mean, all right, Catra kind of gets a pass in a way, right? Because he's, this rich billionaire son, and
yeah.
To an extent, maybe he has a bit more of leeway than the other pilots do. All of them seem pretty drilled and committed to the mission, right? Like they might be a little casual or serious with varying degrees, but for the most part, they're very determined soldiers. Catra can kind of get away with that, though, since this is almost like a side gig for him, right? Like he's this is gap year.
Before he takes over Dad's company, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, you know what? I think there's some type of rebellion project we're doing, some type of secret mission. I think I'll do it, and my dad will make me the pilot because he's probably gonna bankroll the whole thing behind the scenes.
So while in this jungle conflict, Catra, he goes into this town. Some old guy in it, literally a vendor, I think, tells Catra that more and more people are supporting the Sanc Kingdom around the world, and eventually Romefeller will have no support left. So then Catra makes this leap of logic that opens up the path to protect the Sanc Kingdom, where he's just like, okay, well, the new goal is we have to protect the Sanc Kingdom. And I was like, well, that's really not going to work, because if Romefeller just kills all the opposition, then what are you going to do? Again, the leaps of logic sometimes the characters make, they're just saying something to get to the next plot point, regardless of whether or not it makes sense. So
there was, I guess, half wisdom in there, right? Romefeller is a hammer, right? And it can only do one thing. And the Sanc Kingdom just made itself a nail by focusing on the opposite of Romefeller, which is peace. But I don't know. They could have done something else, right, to get into the situation of Sanc Kindom under attack.
Yeah. And around that time, there's we're fighting. Hiro is trying to defend this town. He's fighting these Virgos. He's gonna die, and Catra rescues him in an Ares. And Noin drops the Wing Gundam's Buster Rifle. They use that to wipe the Virgos. And I think, again, a lot of the combat in this show is just a little boring, right? They shoot a big gun and everything disintegrates. There's some good strategic points here in the back half, but overall, I think a lot of it is just... Is that what makes it boring to watch, Isaac? I don't know.
To an extent, yes, because at this point in the story, mobile dolls are so ever present that we don't get cool fight scenes that we do in other Gundam series of essentially what were, the sub bosses or like a unique ace, a cool mobile armor pilot, something like that, where we get cool back and forth between the pilot of the Gundam and then the enemy pilot. They could even have conversations. That's something that we really don't see that much in this series.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely a reason why the combat's not as interesting. And also, I'm not sure if this was an animation choice or something. Maybe it was. But mobile dolls don't do close combat. There is not a single mobile doll, whether White Fang or Oz, that has close combat weapons or that engages in close combat. So that also really limits the type of fight scenes that we see in the series.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. I can't remember them ever drawing a beam saber or anything like that.
Nope, the dolls are strictly, at this point, they're glorified mobile turrets, if you think about that. They move, they point their gun, and they fire. That's all a mobile doll can really do. Sure, it's really effective because Romefeller, is such a massive organization that can pump them out, but on a smaller scale, I think they'd be next to useless if there was only like a handful of them.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. How did I notice that?
Probably because you were half asleep.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
As you heard speech number 10 from Relena about total pacifism, or speech by Treize about the will to fight and soldiers on the battlefield.
Oh, so eventually Noin takes Catra and Hero back to Relena in the Sanc Kindom, and Hero has to go to this school, this special school there that Relena has, and he introduces himself as Hero Yui. And no one acknowledges that he has like a very well-known name. Like if I went to school, Isaac, and they were like, "What's your name?" and I was like, "Well, my name's Nelson Mandela," people would be like, "Wow, like your parents must have been a big fan of Nelson Mandela."
You don't look like any Mandela I've ever seen.
Well, clearly, but like I don't know. Isn't it weird that no one is like, "Oh, Hiro Yui, the famous colony, independence guy"? That's different.
Right. My headcanon for that was, if he was in a colony and he said, "Hi, this is my first time in your class. My name's Hiro Yui. It's nice to meet you all," everyone's jaw probably would have hit the floor. Mm. But the fact that he's not only on Earth, but he's at like Earth on an elite school, a boarding school, as far as they're concerned, he might have said his name is dead, peace-loving president from country X in the third world, as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, they have more of degrees of separation compared to someone from the colonies, where if you hear that name, you probably put down your drink and you're like, "What did you say?"
At this time, the Treize faction is sort of fighting back against Oz. Relena's trying to take in these Treize faction survivors, which is probably a bad idea, but she's going to try to do it anyway, but they decline. They say they don't want to soil the Sanc Kindom, essentially. And then Hero goes out and talks to him, and he's like, "If you're going to lose your lives, there's a better way to sacrifice yourselves if you follow me." And I was like, and they should have, but like they follow him, but like shouldn't they have been like, "Well, who are you?" And like, why don't you tell us your plan before you tell us to follow you?
They're very trusting.
Yeah, I guess. And at this school with Relena, the institution, whatever, the Peacecraft Institution, Dorothy's there. So we meet Dorothy. Who is Dorothy, Isaac? 'Cause to me, did we see Dorothy in the first half? Do I just not remember her? I feel like she popped out of nowhere.
She did. She popped out of nowhere. I don't know what happened. Maybe they determined, you know what? Our male villains, they're kind of locked in. We're going to see one more, but he's such a side character that he almost doesn't matter. So we need someone that's able to be almost Relena's ideological enemy. And they never fight hand to hand or anything like that, but she'll be ever present in a way Dermail can't. Because Dermail really wouldn't be in the same room with her all the time. But Dorothy, they're almost joined at the hip for some episodes.
Yeah, it just felt really awkward. Like all of a sudden she was there and she's like, "I'm going to go." And like it kicks off right away because she's like, "Oh, Relena, let's go to the battlefield or something." For whatever reason, like she wants to drive her out there. So Dorothy drives Relena to the battlefield, which is a terrible idea. Like that would never go well. Why would you do that? And of course they immediately get attacked and, Catra and Noin have to go in and save her. And then, we get some more of your favorite philosophizing where Relena's like, "Is my idea just a dream, Hero? Or is it a mistake?"
To Dorothy's credit, she said exactly what she has to get Relena to go along. Because Relena's probably like, well, I stand for pacifism. This person's clearly the opposite. I think I'll just keep showing her up, really. You know, sir, you want to see the battlefield? Of course. I hate battlefields. This proves total pacifism's right. I'll go with you.
Yeah.
Sure, you can wander around my palace here in the Sanc Kindom and talk to me with the cynical remarks.
Yeah, like, do they have to pay tuition to go to this institution? Like, how did Dorothy get in?
I don't know.
If you were like, oh, you're Duke de Male's granddaughter, maybe it's not a good idea to allow you in my borders. I don't know. Why would you let her in?
Yeah, not just that, but like, you know what was weird about the whole Sanc Kindom episodes was Relena goes back to her school uniform, but she's like the queen of the kingdom. Did she re-enroll herself, or are they like, you know, those uniforms are for like a group of academies around the world just for the Romefeller children, essentially?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, that's fine. It just seemed a little abrupt, but
Also, I have to note from a character design standpoint, Dorothy's eyebrows look a lot like Treize's eyebrows, but I don't see much of Dorothy in Dermale.
so you think that she's somehow related to Treize?
Well, they are. Isn't he her uncle? Or like
Oh, is that how this
cousin
works?
or something like that? Yeah, because Treize is Dermale's nephew,
Oh.
and she is the granddaughter of Dermale. So they are related.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
Because I did notice the eyebrows, and that had to be intentional. But I was like, oh, they're not related, so that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. They were kind of like ridiculously villainous.
Yeah, clearly, listeners, you can see how well I was paying attention to the Dermale family tree.
You're just waiting for those credits to start so you can click next episode.
Oh. Then we go back to space, Isaac, where Duo is just kind of lurking around. We find out that the Death Scythe Hell, his upgraded Death Scythe has cloaking. He uncloaks out of nowhere and takes out some Leos. How did you feel about the Death Scythe Hell?
I think the cloak is cool. I kind of feel like we didn't get a lot of it in the series. It was kind of underutilized, and it really would have made more sense if it had it from the beginning. Like, his colony's approach was, okay, we send the cloaked Gundam, and it does a ton of damage because they can't really see it. Instead of just, well, it has a scythe. And a poncho.
The cloak was neat. It's just one of those things similar to, I think, my comment in Seed is like, well, if this Gundam has it, shouldn't you just like giving it to all of them?
Right, yeah. Or how come Lady Un, she never asked like the engineers when she kind of takes them hostage, like, hey, you know that cloak thing? I want that on every of our new mobile suits. Because we'll essentially be invincible at that point. Can you imagine cloaked Virgos?
Yeah, totally.
The war's over.
Right. I mean, there's just certain plot devices like in science fiction where like once you break down that door, it's hard to be like, why didn't you use it all the time? And cloaking is one of those, I think.
In Lady Un's defense, by that point, she was having mental health issues. So I'm sure the scientist team was very glad she didn't realize the obvious, benefit of the technology.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Then again, she might have known Treize would never go along with being cloaked. Like, he's all about, showing yourself on the battlefield and fighting toe to toe. So maybe she was like, you know what? There's no way he'll give the okay on this. I'm not even going to ask for it.
I don't know. I mean, she's totally down with the Mercurius's like shields where they just stand behind the shield and fire. That's not very honorable.
Well, the Tallgeese had a shield though, so I think Treize is okay with shields. It's just, it's a difference between you can't see the shield and then a shield.
All right, that's fair. Duo's kind of just figuring out what to do here on this colony, Isaac. He's just kind of meandering, kind of just like the show. Didn't you describe the show as meandering? That's a perfect adjective for this whole show. Yeah.
And at this point, Duo's like, he's got a part-time job at the junkyard. he's making a little money on the side with, Uber for trash, Uber for scrap metal. And he's doing a whole lot of nothing. Maybe getting with that woman that looks like Noin's little sister or something like that, right? Noin's 19-year-old sister.
Yeah, Hildy.
Yeah, I mean, her and Noin look way too similar in the design. I'm surprised the character design team said, sure, we'll go with it. Like, couldn't you give her red hair or something like that, right?
Yeah, totally. And I'm also a little confused. How is Hildy alive? The last time we saw her, didn't she almost blow up at the lunar base, or is that later on? Am I mixing that up?
I think that's later on.
Oh, that's later on. Okay. I still don't know how she survived that anyway, but...
She's so insignificant, it doesn't matter. But, yeah.
So, yeah, Duo's doing is like, would you say Uber for scrap?
Yeah, Uber for scrap metal or junk metal. Speaking of lunar base, what's so different about this series too is how little of a role Luna played in it. Luna's always been critical in so many Gundam series, whether it's as like a massive military base or it's, a huge population center. Here, it really seemed like Luna was a mobile suit factory and that was it. And even then, it was never too critical of a factory. It really comes into focus twice. First, Tuberov goes there and starts making the Virgo 1s. Later on, White Fang takes control of it and pumps out Virgo 2s. That's about it. For all its ability to make Virgos, we never really hear about Oz or Romefeller, trying to bend over backwards to retake Luna.
Yeah, or go destroy it.
Right, with something powerful like Space Station Barge, which they've had from the beginning of the series.
Yeah, floating out there. Why don't you go shoot that with Barge?
Yeah, that was so underutilized, right? Like, we essentially had a super weapon from the beginning of the series that almost never got used. They used it once. They took out a sizable number of mobile suits, almost shot a colony, then Barge gets taken out, and that's it.
Maybe their thought was they wanted to retake it at some point, so they didn't want to blow it up. I don't know.
Well, yeah, maybe that Romefeller's corporate thinking, right? They're like, well, technically we invested in it, so we can't wipe it out outright. We just need to focus on retaking it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That kind of makes sense.
So while Duo's in this colony, he runs into the Oz mechanic that's testing, Unit 0 via simulations. He kind of declined to destroy Unit 0 when Tuberov told him in the first half. And so here we see that he's still running these simulations. He wants to either find Duo or Wu Fei, because he knows that they're both in space, to get them to pilot it so that he can save the data. He wants to eventually supersede Tuberov's mobile doll program with data from the Zero system. And he wants Duo to actually fight against mobile dolls with live fire. So he gets Duo in Zero. Duo takes out the dolls, but he hallucinates and that he destroys the colony with Hildy in it. So Duo does not like the Zero system, and we're going to go through that for every pilot here in the back half of this show. They're all going to get to pilot Unit 0 at least once, and they're all going to have a hard time with it. We saw Catra do it in the first half, and we're going to, every, 5 episodes or so, Isaac, we're going to cycle through, okay, Troa, your turn, okay, Wu Fei, your turn, Duo, you just had yours.
Meaningless Oz grunt. It's your turn to pilot it, meaningless grunt. Wing Zero is the village bicycle. Everybody gets a ride.
Tuberov's goons eventually come after Trent once Tuberov figures out that he did not destroy Unit 0. But Trent goes nuts. He tries to fight him, and he goes nuts, and he's going to destroy the colony. But Trent gets stopped, and 0 floats away. So right after we see Duo, the next episode, Isaac, we start to understand that how Romefeller's plans are coalescing. They're going to send a bunch of Virgos to Luxembourg.
The Treize faction's there.
Yes, which is the headquarters of the Treize faction. And Catra wants to go and save them, but Hero's like, no, you wait here until you find Troa. Because if you remember, listeners, in the last half, we sort of lost Troa at the end there. No one knows where he is. And Hero, and again, this is another leap of logic, Isaac, where Catra's like, Hero, we should go. We should go fight and help the Treize faction, because they're really the only people that are on our side. And Hero's like, nah, you should just not go. Even though, you're besides me, you're the best pilot on Earth. But I don't think we should have you in here. You should wait here and do nothing until you find Troa, who may or may not be alive. How does that make any sense? Catra needs to get his ass to the battlefield and help out.
I mean, yeah. But at the same time, the pilots are just, they have such different perspectives, I feel like. And also at the same time, they're so directionless that it would make perfect sense that they really don't know what to do, or they're giving conflicting, illogical advice to each other.
Yeah. Aye.
There really is no command structure. I mean, do you remember that scene where Duo's talking to, I forgot, whoever it is, Scientist O or whatever? No, sorry, it was Catra. He was talking to him, and the scientist was like, you have a pure heart, you really need to listen to yourself. And then, some orders started coming through on, a microphone, and the scientist just rips it out.
No, I don't remember that one.
Oh, wow. Well, you must have been asleep. All right.
Who was the order from?
See, that's the thing. It sounded like it was from some chain of command in the colony. I think Catra even said, is that from leadership? Or is that from command? And then the guy just kind of hit the console and then ripped out the microphone. And he was like, ultimately on the battlefield, Catra, you have to listen to your heart or whatever, be a compassionate person. Something like that.
Got it.
I'm gleaming from that. I think the scientists really co-opted the whole structure of whatever the resistance was. We'll never know.
That is exactly right. And we find that out in about 3 lines of dialogue in the last episode. So it would have been nice to sprinkle that throughout the series, not just fill the plot hole at the very end.
So is Quinze understandably upset? Like, to an extent, has he been the one behind the Gundam Wing project, and these scientists really kind of co-opted him, forcing him to really White Fang at the last third of the series?
Well, yeah, so we're jumping way ahead here, but yeah, then in the very last episode, Quinze is like, he's pointing his gun at the engineers, and he's like, how many times must you interfere in Operation Meteor? And he's like, isn't it bad enough that you change the orders to the Gundam pilots? Like, that's the whole plot, Isaac.
Wow. Yeah.
We need 3 episodes on that, not 3 lines.
Right? I mean, Endless Waltz kind of sheds a little bit of light on what really happened, but clearly there was some grand plan that didn't go according to plan. Who knows who else was involved besides Quinze? There's probably a whole bunch of other characters that had their own adventures and stuff getting the whole Gundam project underway in Operation Meteor.
Well, I think a lot of the manga side stories do fill in the gaps here.
We'll never know.
I'm sure there are listeners who have read those side stories, and maybe they're really good. I've heard great things about Glory of Losers, which is the sort of redone version of Gundam Wing that sort of incorporates all of the different side stories over the years. And so maybe I'll just bring that up now, because that was going to be what I was going to say at the end, Isaac, was I would actually recommend that if you want to watch Gundam Wing and you're not overly attached to watching the animated version, I'd probably go read Glory of the Losers instead, because apparently that has all this extra material that makes things, fills in the gaps and makes things make more sense. So that's my recommendation if you want to get into Gundam Wing, is to actually not watch the show, but go read the manga.
Brian's Gundam Wing advice: don't watch Gundam Wing. Read the manga that expands on what it should have been.
Yes, that's my advice. Now, if you want to watch the animated one, go for it. But if you had to choose one, if you're trying to use your time wisely, right? Like Isaac, there's a million Gundam things to watch, right?
Right.
And there's other things to watch, right? People shouldn't just watch Gundam. You should watch other things too. So
true. Mostly Gundam, though. Maybe Escaflowne.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Escaflowne. Another good one, yeah.
I'm an Escaflowne guy.
Good designs in that show.
I loved it.
Zechs is also on his way to Luxembourg. He has these cool anti-ship missiles. So whereas Hiro and Catra are trying to get to Luxembourg on Earth, Zechs is still in space with the tall geese, and he tries to intercept the Virgos before they get dropped. As you said, since they're being made at the moon, they have to go from the moon to Luxembourg. So he's trying to pick as many off as he can before they get dropped. And he uses these cool anti-ship missiles, Isaac, where he fires like 2 of them and then they split up. I wish we had seen more of those in the series.
They're pretty cool. And of course they gave it to Zechs because he might be the coolest character.
Right.
I don't necessarily think a lot of what he does is logical, but overall he's a kind of cool guy. They got a cool voice actor, cool character design and all that. So it made sense. They would give him cool moments like that.
Shortly after this, Isaac, Relena totally owns the Romefeller Foundation. Again, she's at this conference or whatever. I get so lost in what's a conference versus what's a meeting. I feel like they just have random table meetings when they need more plot to happen. So
yeah, Romefeller's always meeting. That's all they do.
There was that one episode where the guy's like, let's bring this up at the general meeting tomorrow at 11 a.m. I was like, don't you have a meeting every day? What else do you do?
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what he meant. Like, we have a general meeting at 11 a.m. every day. We'll bring this up at tomorrow's general meeting.
Jesus.
Order number 1. Who will give our speech today on pacifism, war, soldiers?
And DeMail will drink tea because that's
There's
what he
3
does.
options. We got DeMail, Treize, or Relena. Who's going to talk?
So Relena asks Romefeller at this meeting or whatever it is to use peace as their model. Romefeller then tries to one-up her, and they're like, you know what? We're being attacked by Zechs Marquise, a.k.a. Miliardo Peacecraft, a.k.a. your brother. What do you have to say about it? And that was their master plan, Isaac.
She handled it well.
Yeah, she's like, that's not Miliardo. You said it's Zechs. And they're like, oh. That was it. That was the plan. They didn't have a response for that.
Yeah. They apologized right away. They're like, well, if you say he's not your brother, and he's clearly fighting not for the ideals of the Sanc Kindom or peace, then we do apologize for kind of accusing you and him.
Right. I just thought that was pathetic for an organization of their caliber.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, some of them probably still view her as like a little girl, right? So they're like, well, we'll just kind of intimidate her in a meeting and then we can kind of push her around.
What did you think about Treize just making Epyon somehow and giving it to Hero?
It didn't make any sense, honestly. Nothing Treize does make sense. He's clearly just sort of a mouthpiece for the writing, and first he lost all his power. The Treize faction gets almost next to wiped out. Then he still comes back from power to take over Romefeller. The whole Epyon thing, Epyon gets passed around from Hero to Zechs, and then Zechs just keeps it. It's not good, Brian. That's my summation. That's what I'll say.
But, like, who made Epyon? Doesn't he need the engineers? Because Epyon basically has the Zero system or something very similar. Doesn't he need the engineers to do that? Or did I miss the part where they were like, oh, Treize went and talked to the engineer? And
I don't remember a scene specifically with the engineers. Maybe they did get like an offhand comment or something, or it was a scene so quick I don't remember it. But I do remember him with some Leos in a field. I think they were collecting the Wing Zero, or was it the Heavy Arms? And they were talking about, how they're going to study it and build their own. Or he ordered some Gundanium from Luna, something like that. So that was enough for me. I was like, well, okay, we'll see Epyon.
Yeah, okay.
Still terrible.
Shortly after Treize gives Epyon to Hero, Zechs gets custody of Unit 0, Wing 0, in sort of an unorthodox manner, right? He's shredding through all these Tauruses, but he does eventually get overwhelmed when one of the Tall Geese's verniers are hit, and he blows it up pretty much right away. I thought maybe he had some fight left in the Tall Geese, but he got, one vernier hit, and he kind of just gave it up. Was that surprising to you?
At the one hand, I was like, well, they did mention that it's a very old mobile suit, right?
Yeah.
It's really advanced, and it's really good, but it's very old. So I was like, sure. And also, since they're not killing characters clearly, they have to kill the next best thing, which is mobile suits.
True, yeah.
Because not one character has died so far yet, Brian, from the main core group. And I'm not counting Relena's dad.
Yeah.
So everyone is still alive to this day.
True. So he ditches Tall Geese and he jumps into the Wing Zero. And once again, Isaac, we see that Gundams do not have any security measures. If you get in the cockpit, which apparently you can open the door from the outside, there's no locks, you can log in just fine. So there are no keys in the After Colony era, just like the Universal Century.
Yeah, they took some notes from Gatto. Just hop in there and hit the power button and you're ready to go.
Once we saw Epyon, Isaac, that was when I appreciated that the Tall Geese was not red.
Yeah. Tall Geese's colors aren't bad. The design's a little boring, but I don't know. I have an Epyon, or at least I did. It's who knows where it is now. But it's kind of cool, I guess. It's got a little bit of Master Gundam in it, especially the head part. It's okay. It's a weird transforming thing. I've never been too big on the whole double-headed dragon thing.
Yeah. I mean, it barely used the dragon mode in the show, though, I feel like.
Yeah, very rarely, right? And other than that, it's too close quarters for its own good. It's got the heat kind of tail chain thing, a beam saber, and that's about it.
It seemed very fast and very powerful, but it was a little boring to watch fight because it would just kind of fly by in a flash and then all the suits would just explode. Yeah.
With the number of Virgos they have, you figure one of them would get the shot.
Nope. But yeah, from the perspective of just Zechs as a Char clone, it was nice that he didn't always have a red mobile suit because that's like almost two on the nose, right?
Yeah, he didn't have one.
Well, eventually had Epyon, right? But I mean...
Burgundy.
Yeah. But I mean, at least half the show he didn't have a red one, so...
True. Now that I think about it, the only red suit we see is Mercurius.
Oh, what about the Cancers? Those are red.
Oh, you got me there.
Don't forget those aquatic mobile suits.
They're so unhumanoid, though, that they're almost just mobile armors, right?
Yeah, that's fair. They're smiling undersea mobile armors.
Crabby.
Did you notice in that scene where Zechs is fighting all the Tauruses and he takes control of Wing Zero that one of the call signs for the Taurus pilot, who's a human, is Scarecrow, which I thought was an awesome call sign for a mobile doll pilot.
I vaguely remember it, and I assume he died.
Yeah, probably. Oh man, Isaac, I wrote down this great example of random philosophizing from Treize. You ready for this?
Do it.
So this is when Treize was talking to Hero. Treize says, well, Epyon can show pilots their own future. Regretfully, there was no future for me to choose from, and after you've piloted this suit, if you end up like me, let us both part with our lives. Hero then says, why did you build this? And this is Treize's answer. All my life, I thought humans sensed their existence through continuous battle, though I couldn't come to any conclusions. My battle is over, but I have yet to determine the reason for battle. To find this reason, I figured a Gundam would be the most appropriate mobile suit. Also give my blessings to the winner and the loser. What?
What a bunch of nonsense.
It doesn't mean anything.
No, this is just pointless cool talk for the point of being pointless cool talk and shallow philosophical musings. It doesn't mean anything.
Agree. So back in Luxembourg, the Leos are doing battle with the Virgos. And Isaac, I don't think I ever saw in the show, up to this point or after, the Leos ever shoot down one Virgo. Or even a Taurus.
Yeah. I think this is it for the Leos. They're just outclassed by everything else on the battlefield. If they're in space, they're going to lose to Tauruses or Virgos. If they're on ground, on Earth, they're going to lose to Virgos. So this is it for the Leos.
They said that they shot some down off screen, I guess, but I don't think we ever saw it. So, not good. The engineers really screwed over colonies by creating the Mercurius and the Viate, because that's what created the Virgo, so.
Pretty much. Well, I mean, the colonies kind of come out on top in the final battle to an extent.
Yeah, true. I mean, if the colonies did have to steal the Virgo from us, though.
Yeah. They did a slight modification to it, right? They just kind of doubled the shield, put the big rockets on the pack, and that was kind of it.
Yeah. And even, I think Tuberov made the Virgo 2s. He just didn't put them into production. I think didn't they say something like, oh, we took your parts or something for the upgraded Virgos.
Something like that when they kidnap him, yeah. What did you think of Tuberov?
I thought he had a very, fitting, unceremonious death. It would have been a better death if we knew more about the White Fang when they killed him.
In a show where the pilots of the Gundams and all the other main villains, to an extent that there really isn't a villain, I kind of like Tuberov to an extent, yeah. He's got a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I mean, he was a good villain in that you didn't like him, right?
Yeah. Do you remember the scene with him and Lady Un where I think they're watching the Gundam pilots, or they send out some mobile dolls to fight the Gundam pilots? This is before he shoots her. Of course.
Yeah.
She says something like, what, are you jealous of the Gundam pilots? And he was like, jealous? Don't be ridiculous. Maybe he was, though, because I don't think the dolls were doing well against them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They could have done more with the whole AI aspect here.
Right.
Maybe they didn't know that back in 1995. I mean, we're saying that now in 2021, but if you were to redo this show today, I think you would go deeper into the AI aspect of the mobile dolls for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Tuberov was also half a badass, I think. His bravest moment is when he kind of runs away from the guards, and I think he takes a bullet in the shoulder.
Is that near when he dies? I don't remember that.
Yeah, that was minutes before his death.
Mm.
He got to the command center and sent out the few mobile dolls he could.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because he was thinking that those would get him out of this situation, and then he was shocked when it didn't work out.
Going back to kind of something I said earlier, Brian, who was the main villain of Gundam Wing?
Oh man, it doesn't have one.
Yeah, it's not Dermail. He dies too early. Can't be Tuberov. He was just a sub boss. I wouldn't say it's Dorothy, even though for some inexplicable reason, maybe this is on your notes, but she switches sides.
Yep.
And I don't think it was Treize, because he kind of reveals towards the end that he kind of wanted to die to allow peace to happen.
Right.
So to an extent, he was a good guy. Was it Zechs? Was Zechs the main villain this whole time? Not really, right?
Definitely not in the first half, no.
Yeah, so...
Maybe in form in the last battle. But again, he wanted the same thing that everyone else did. I guess that's the point of the show, maybe. Whether or not it works, though, is another story.
It doesn't. Brian, I mentioned this to you before the podcast. Gundam Wing is very unique among almost every other Gundam show, series, and movie in that there were no ship-to-ship battles.
Mm-hmm.
Not one ship-to-ship mounted energy weapon or other type of cannon or scene where there was, multiple fleets or two fleets engaging each other in combat. That's really rare in Gundam. My headcanon for explaining it is, well, the United Earthsphere Alliance at the start of the series was in control of the Earthsphere for so long, they really had no need for it. whenever they had to go to space, they just really were transporting mobile suits. So that's why even when the colonies got liberated and autonomous, they didn't really have any ships on hand to make their navy, and I guess they really didn't focus on designing a battleship from the ground up and sending it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. What also probably plays into is, I think when we did our colony episode, didn't we figure out that the number of people on colonies in this universe is much lower? So I think there's just not as many people in space in this show.
Good point. It was really hard for us to get a sense of how many colonies are at each L point too, right?
Yeah.
We never really get a good look or a good number. Maybe it's in the lore somewhere or a manga, but we never really find out. And I think that the lack of fleet battles really detracts from the series as a whole. Fleet battles are fun. They're fun to watch. They're engaging. They add a new level of danger to the risk that the pilots face and all that. You never really get that here. Something else we never get by definition is we never get hangar bay scenes. You always see that in Gundam series. They're talking to mechanics, they're getting upgrades, they're chatting and all that. We never get that in this series.
We get some towards the end on the Peace Million.
All right, you got me there. Yeah, which is too godlike of a ship.
But that leads into my question about the Peace Million. As soon as the Gundam boys got to the Peace Million, the show got better. And it was because they were all in one place, and because we got to see scenes like that where they were in the hangar bay talking and interacting with each other instead of all being off on 5 separate missions where you get to spend 5 minutes per episode with each Gundam boy and they don't really talk to each other. Should we have seen the Peace Million? I mean, the Peace Million is essentially your white base, even though it comes in at the very end.
On a scale, it's also massive compared to the white base.
Right, yeah. I just mean, like, that is our capital ship, right? If you had to say that the show what is the capital ship in the show, it would be the Peace Million. Should we have seen the Peace Million much earlier? Like, would that have helped out the series?
Absolutely, I think so. We would have had a centralized place for the characters to meet, talk, have scenes together, drama. Instead, we got everybody really too scattered. I don't know why they made this choice. Maybe it was just experimental. They were trying something different with how the series was. Who knows? But yeah, it would have been cool to have them centralized. Maybe all the engineers are on the Peace Million too. And whatever, Quinze is there. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. I liked the Peace Million. I think it should have been there earlier. Or something like it. It doesn't have to be that ship.
Right.
That was a good central hub that we lacked the whole time, so...
What did you think of Quinze and White Fang coming out of nowhere as not only a new enemy faction, but really becoming the main villain at the end?
I think it was a really big missed opportunity. I don't disagree with the existence of White Fang. I think White Fang actually makes a lot of sense. When the first few White Fang episodes came, I thought to myself, like, it feels really weird that they're just coming with this now in episode like mid-30s or late 30s, early 40s when White Fang shows up. That just seems like out of left field, because we just spent 35 episodes developing some other evil force in Oz or Romefeller, and now we're totally pivoting, which makes a lot of that development kind of go out the window, which I think is unfortunate. It's kind of like, well, why did I just watch all that stuff if now we're going to go fight these guys? And I think it would have made a lot more sense if the Gundams had been sent by White Fang, and they were all members of White Fang in the beginning, and they said that. And maybe they were supposed to be, and that's what was hinted at the end, that the engineers sort of took the operation over from something like White Fang, if not White Fang exactly. But I mean, they could have had White Fang uniforms or something. Because to me, it would make sense that the Gundams came from White Fang.
Yeah, who else bankrolled it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Catra's dad?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's listeners out there that have read all the mangas and stuff, and maybe it further explained in there. But that's the problem, though, Isaac. That's a big underpinning of the show. And if it's that basic to the plot, I feel like you have to have that in the show. You can't have that in the side story manga.
Exactly, yeah. And it didn't feel fulfilling. It's not good to have them as the final enemy you face in the final battle, even though they really hijacked a Romefeller weapon, an Oz weapon, the space battleship Libra. That never made sense either. This is clearly a space station, not a battleship. So that didn't make sense. Dorothy switching sides to the colonies, I didn't buy that at all. Like, why is she even here? They're in the colonies. It should kind of be beneath her, really, to switch sides.
Yeah, I agree. I could not figure out Dorothy the entire time. I kept asking myself, why is she in this show? What is she doing? Are we just using her so that Relena has someone to talk to? Because if Dorothy wasn't there, Relena would kind of go places by herself.
Yeah, or Noin would be there, I guess, or Pagan, but Noin was just a glorified bodyguard, and Pagan is her chauffeur. So not a lot of interesting dialogue there, and I don't see Relena and Treize being joined at the hip, since Treize is going to be in battle half the time, right?
Yeah, definitely. There was one point when Relena and Dorothy were going back and forth, and they were arguing about total pacifism, and like Relena got really catty. This was right when Oz was going to attack the Sanc Kingdom, and she was like, if Oz targets the Sanc Kingdom, I will just dissolve the nation, and there won't be anything left for you to attack. It was when she surrenders herself to Oz.
Okay.
And then Dorothy was like, oh, you did so amazing, Relena, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I'm not in the mood for your flattery right now, Dorothy. That was the equivalent of like pulling off your white glove and like slapping her in the face.
She probably saw through how fake Dorothy was being.
Oh, definitely. Dorothy was fake the whole time, up until the end.
Even, I assume her reasons for joining Zechs and all them were fake. What was she doing? Did she just want to keep the war going? She was like, well, I'm not really an officer, but I clearly can command people. So just bring me on the ship, put me in control of the Zero system, and I'll keep the war going, just to spite Relena.
She did constantly harp on the idea that she loves war, so maybe you're right. Maybe she just wanted to keep the war going. It was one of those situations, though, where I was like, I don't really understand this character, and I don't really care.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then she lives at the end, despite all the trouble that she's caused.
But that was the only real emotion that we got out of her, was at the end when Treize died, and she was really upset about that legitimately. And I think that was when it hit her that all this, whatever the heck she had been doing, was kind of dumb.
Yeah, I suppose so, but kind of too little too late, really. She and Dermail kind of caused a lot of problems along the way. Dermail died pretty early for someone that was kind of shaping up to be the main villain. But she lived through the end and shows up later in Endless Waltz. Which Virgo do you like more, Brian? 1 or 2?
I think the Virgo 2 in the White Fang colors is gross looking. It's like booger green.
Booger green? It's like khaki.
I don't know. Well, whatever. Boogers can be khaki too. Booger khaki then is what I'm going.
You got me there. All right.
The colors are definitely better on the Virgo one. I mean, they're not that much different.
I kind of like the whole suspensor field on one shoulder. It's more of a interesting look.
Yeah, I'll give you that. It's a better artistic design when it's only on one side, for sure.
Exactly. Less symmetrical. Yeah.
Oh, shoot. I forgot something about Tuberov. Let's go back to him for a second. Did you notice at the end when he died, he exclaimed, I'm invincible, just like Boris did from GoldenEye?
No, I didn't catch that. I recognize it now, though.
I wonder if they added that in the dub to be a GoldenEye reference, or if it was in the original script. But
maybe, because they're about the same time, right? Yeah.
Because I was also thinking, like, if you dig into that AI a bit, I mean, if I was to write Tuberov today, he would have a fate like Arnim Zola from the Marvel films, where he ends up being an AI himself.
I can definitely see that in Gundam. Like, Zechs and the Gundam pilots, at the final battle, they kind of put aside their differences and they start powering down Lyra. And then the power levels start climbing and they're like, what's going on? And then, like, I don't know, Sally Poe runs over and she's like, look at the screen. And, like, it's, digital Tuberov. And he's like, I uploaded my brain, into the Doll Zero system. And I'm like, of course. And the final boss is, like, Gundam Doll.
Yes, Gundam Tuberov.
That'd be pretty cool, actually. Better than what we got.
Instead, he got shot by a guy with a white thing on his arm. You asked me what I thought about White Fang appearing. I don't understand how they got that many people into Libra and into the factory to take it over.
Yeah.
Like, were all of Oz's soldiers secretly White Fang soldiers? Like, how you need, like, thousands of people to make this work.
Right, it didn't make any sense. So first we heard the whole, well, we're White Fang. We used to be the Treize faction. But then Treize shows up to attack White Fang. So they can't be Treize soldiers. So was White Fang, like, really good at secrecy? Like, this whole time they had, like, an army at all the colonies. And then the moment they got the signal, everybody went to Libra or their battle stations. And, they had this military hierarchy ready to go. It really got pulled out of nowhere. And it's pretty poor writing, I think. Poor setup.
Yeah, I mean, because I totally bought it when it was just the 4 people on the ship with Tuberov who shot him.
Yeah.
Even though they said, okay, I used to be from the Treize faction, that didn't really make sense to me. But at least there were only 4 of them, and I was like, okay, I could see you having 4 people undercover, right?
Yeah.
But then when it turns out that they just all of a sudden have control of the facilities, I was like, well, have they been working undercover at Oz for years? Like thousands of them to make this happen? I don't know. So I agree.
Yeah, that didn't make much sense. And what did you think about the end situation and how it was kind of like Return of the King, where like it just didn't end. The crisis did not end. Just like Return of the King had multiple endings. For Gundam Wing, the ending was first, the final threat was Earth being destroyed by the Libra's cannon. And then, okay, we knocked out the cannon. Well, no, not yet. Now Libra and Peace Million are going to fall. Okay, we managed to get the Peace Million engines on, so Libra's not going to fall. Well, one corner of Libra still is going to fall on the planet, and that's enough to take out the Earth still. It was like, okay, well, your analysis said it takes all of Libra to kind of put Earth into a nuclear winter. Now you're saying just a chunk of it, a quarter of it can do it? That's
right.
We need tighter analysis.
Button down the analysis, people.
Yeah, if that was true, we should have been firing the Buster Cannon at Libra, 3 episodes ago, just taking out the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I wrote down in my notes, I think it was episode 44 or 46, and I wrote down, like, this really felt like it should have been the final episode. Or, like, you should have resolved it here. And then I knew that it was going to be dragged out, given that there were 3 or 4 episodes left or so after that. The thing about the chunk of Libra really bothered me because I thought it was really tacked on. The engineers sacrificed themselves to kind of stop Libra from falling. But then like the one chunk breaks off, and then there's just some random guy, I think, in the room who goes like, oh, but it's still going to be enough to bring about a permanent nuclear winter, and then you just like move on to the next point. It was very tacked on. I did not like that at all. I mean, it's fine to have him like go stop the piece falling, but don't say that one piece is still enough to do whatever Libra was going to do.
Yeah, from what I remember, I think he said like there's a reactor in there too, or a power core or something. Each of the corners of that four-pointed base had like its own power core or something. Whatever. Sure. Okay. What did you think of Treize leading into space, this massive army fighting for Earth, fighting for the world nation, composed solely of space-type Leos?
So I have a number of thoughts on this.
Against the White Fang's massive army of only Virgo 2s.
Right. To my earlier point, again, we never saw Leo make a scratch on a Virgo. So I was very underwhelmed when they said, oh, we have thousands of space... What did they say? Primarily composed of space Leos. And I couldn't tell if that was a joke by the writing team to put that in.
Yeah, Treize is an idiot.
Visually, it was cool when he rode in on the tall geese. I liked that.
Yeah.
But in terms of, of chance of success with the space Leos, I mean, they weren't going to win.
Not only did Treize like take in the worst mobile suits to go into space, but he lets himself die, which kind of, to an extent, lets his army be defeated, right? Because they never fight without him. I mean, if Dermail was still around running the show, he would have thrown like millions of Virgo 1s into space. He would have put nuclear weapons too. Nothing would have stopped Dermail.
Yeah, totally. So I liked it visually, but the thing I didn't like the most about it, Isaac, was just that when we got to that point and I realized that it was going to be Treize leading Oz against Zechs, I kind of thought to myself, like, well, now Treize is just in control of Earth again. Why did we even go through the arc of him losing control? Like, what was the point? Like, we just ended up at the same spot. It was like a big circle.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of time was wasted. Like, plot was wasted.
Not only that, but it's a bad setup, isn't it? Like, the Gundams are almost a sideshow at this point to the battle between the World Nation and Treize versus White Fang and Zechs. Wu Fei shows up and, like, literally gets in Treize's face, but other than that, the rest of the Gundams were almost kind of on the sidelines.
Yeah, Wu Fei was still a little sore because Treize punked him earlier.
Yeah, but I mean, this didn't help either because Treize kind of let him win to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah, but even if Wu Fei wanted a fair duel, he should have got out of his Gundam like last time and fought him hand to hand.
In space, they're going to duel.
Well, they could go, I don't know, stop in the asteroid or whatever. But
they'll start spinning one of the ships to create artificial gravity, and then like they'll disembark and get inside the ship and then draw their swords.
Yeah, or they could go in the colony. I don't know.
Treize would still win. Like nothing's happened between now and the last duel where Wu Fei is like a better fighter.
Yeah, that's my point though. But Wu Fei came up on him with the Ultron, which is clearly better than the Tall Geese.
Well, yeah, I suppose to an extent. Depends on the hands, right? Also, like, even from a dueling perspective, isn't it kind of not fair? Because, like, Treize is what, 6'3"?
Yeah.
And Wu Fei's like 5'7"?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's a small fry.
Treize was being a bit unfair.
What did you think of Zechs taking control of White Fang? Because White Fang just existing and coming into the show is one thing. But then when Zechs took control of it, I was like, what are we doing here?
It really makes no sense unless you kind of view it from the point of view of Quinze is really the one in control of White Fang. But Zechs is such a good military leader, essentially trained by the top military, Oz, that sure, he gave the go-ahead for an enemy of Oz to really lead White Fang, just for the benefit of his military abilities and skills. That's really the only way to view it, because Zechs has no motivation for joining them other than get back at Oz, get back at Romefeller, right?
Yeah, but it's
not great.
I mean, I could see it if he was just doing it to get back at Romefeller or something, but I mean, he's attacking all of Earth basically, and the Sanc Kindom is there, so there's going to be collateral damage there. I don't know.
Very true. And also, you remember, he's in a bar drinking pretty much at like the halfway point when you meet Quinze, kind of, because he's really done with the revenge. If you remember, he defeated the United Earth Sphere Alliance. They're pretty much all gone. Well, they are really all gone at this point. They're the ones that attacked the Sanc Kindom. Technically, Romefeller, of course, was behind it. But I guess for Zechs' purposes, as long as the United Earth Sphere Alliance is gone, he's satisfied. So I guess he was really done with his story then. A lot of it became this weird back and forth between him and Treize, though. Remember, they were doing so much, we're connected, or blah, blah, blah stuff.
Yeah.
I wish they sort of maybe put in something where Treize was involved in taking out Sanc Kindom. That would have been like, oh, this makes perfect sense now.
Right.
But no, I guess even Treize would never be involved in something like that, just based on his personality and his beliefs. Dermail, yes.
Yeah, but they killed him off, so...
Yeah, Dermail's gone. I don't know if anyone told Zechs, probably, but...
Yeah, I just felt like him all of a sudden being in control of White Fang and taking the stance that he did. Now, I know they explained it at the end, but for like the 10 episodes where they hadn't explained it yet, it felt like it was like a Spanish soap opera where they were just, no, I am the real villain, just to have some like shock value. And I didn't like that, especially because before that, Zechs was so... I don't know, maybe cerebral is not the right word, but he had a plan like the whole time, which he executed fairly well. So, I don't know if I liked Zechs as much in the last half. He was my favorite character in the first half, and I'm not sure if I have a favorite character in the second half. So,
I was about to say, like, who did you ever like Zechs? He was so... I didn't really care for him as a lightning count because, I don't know, I thought he was this kind of weird Char-looking guy that didn't really do much besides what Treize told him to do.
I don't know. I liked that he kept his desire to avenge the Sanc Kindom secret. I thought that was a good storyline. I thought that was the best part of the first half, pretty much. And to see him do this big turn at the end, I didn't find it very fulfilling. I thought it was a little strange. So I know they tried to explain it, but I don't know if I really buy it. And then I feel like they did a lot of work to get us Zechs versus Treize at the end, Isaac, and then they didn't even fight in a mobile suit.
Yeah, Zechs really subverted our expectations, right? He's like, I'm not even going out to duel you. Are you nuts?
Right. Yeah.
I'm staying in my command center, and maybe I'll fire the main cannon at you.
Yeah, I mean, like, subverting it is fine. That's probably a good move, actually. It just seems like they made the plot go a certain way to pit those two against each other, and then to not have them fight is a little disappointing.
Yeah, right. Especially since they're the leaders of both armies. They both technically had a Gundam. Zechs really wasn't using it until he needed to after the battleship Libra was kind of on its last legs. But yeah, what could have been, right? It would have been an epic fight. Instead, maybe Zechs wisely knew the Gundam pilots will be here any minute now. I really don't have to do much.
That's what's so weird about the back half to me, because I do think that the battles with White Fang were more engaging than those with Oz. But like the whole justification of like all of a sudden White Fang coming out of nowhere It's just so strange. I feel like the development was better for Oz. We spent all this time learning about the aristocrats and Duke de Mail and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden now we got to stare at, like, the bad guy is a dude who wears a vest in space in cans, his little blue vest. Like, it just,
Right, yeah.
like, we spent all the development on one bad organization, but it was terribly boring. And you illogically get to this new villain who's more engaging from a visual standpoint, but I have no idea how I got there.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. You really summarized it well. I also feel like Quinze's revelation should have almost been him being a good guy in a way. Let me explain. Him revealing, we built the Gundams. I was the one behind getting everybody together, the engineers, and, really kind of mastermind this project to liberate the colonies. We're here now. We're going to back you guys up. And then if it could be rewritten that way, I would continue it further and say have Dorothy become the final villain. Dorothy really taking the place of where her grandfather could have been, wanting to get revenge for him dying. We already saw she had that cool sort of zero system panoramic control room.
Oh, yeah. She was basically wearing Cerebro from the X-Men films.
Pretty much, yeah. So it would have been cool if she got in Libra or something, or she got in some situation where, she gets Virgo 3s and some other mobile armors or something, and, she's really the final boss, and Tuberov left her some type of emergency weapon or something, that was originally for Dermail.
I actually thought that's where they were going.
Yeah.
When they introduced her, I thought that DeMail was going to kill Relena once they had her as, like, queen, or otherwise depose her, and then install Dorothy there as a way for DeMail to still be in power, but not, like, be outright in power, right? I mean, it's one thing for, like, the dictator to elect himself, but if he holds an election with his puppet candidate, that's more believable. But then, yeah, you're right, she switched sides, and she switched sides to, like, stand on the bridge next to Zechs when he, like, sits in the chair and control the mobile doll. So, yeah, I just get the sense that they didn't really know what they wanted her to do, or I don't know. I'm still very confused by Dorothy's presence in this story. Maybe I'd have to watch it again, but I don't know.
I'll go a step further and say it was a lost opportunity, because first we see her and she's introduced as this ideological opposite of Relena. Mm-hmm. So over the course of the series, they could have just evolved that into her becoming an actual physical threat also. Maybe not because she's a trained pilot or a military officer, but Tuberov left her the keys to the car. Dermail kind of left her, direction and purpose. The rest is really up to her to say, you know what, warfare is really the way to go. Peace can never exist permanently, or at least not without force. Here's my plan to use Virgo 3s, Libra, or whatever else to really, put the nail in the coffin for the colonies. Maybe she blows up a couple in the final battle. That'd be pretty cool. And then, she says, I'm going to start my absolute control over the Earth sphere. And, of course, it's up to the Gundam pilots, up to Treize and Zechs. Oh, God, that would have been awesome. They all team up against Dorothy.
To your point a few weeks ago, you told me this off the podcast. We definitely need to do a Gundam Wing rewrite episode.
Absolutely.
Where we start from scratch.
We save it.
Because I think you and I agree that this is a pretty great premise. And I'm not sure how we arrived at this execution.
Brian, we got in our car. We said we were going down the street. And we ended up in Ohio.
If you read the log line for this show, it could be something, like the Earth kills colony leader, colonies send 5 Gundams on revenge. That's the start of a great Western, Isaac.
Yeah, right?
You can't screw that up. I don't get it.
So unique in setting, too, for Gundam, where the Earth is evil from day zero. And yeah, the colonies don't have fleets or armies or anything, so we're not in a Xeon situation or anything like that. Instead, it's just what they could scrap together was 5 Gundams, and they send them on a mission. And that's it. Speaking of colonies, Brian, this series is also in its own category for having the worst names for colonies. Colonies in every other Gundam series have had interesting names. Mm-hmm. The groups of colonies themselves. In Gundam X, they were called Clouds, like Cloud 9. In Gundam C, they had names like, Junius for the plants and all that. And Heliopolis for Kira's own colony. In the original series, they get their own names, or even group names, like 30 Bunch or Mahal, things like that. Here we get terrible names like, colony X1799 and things like that, right? Isn't it terrible? It's so, or am I reading too much into it? Like, or maybe not enough into it. Should I read that as United Earthsphere Alliance is that oppressive? Where, like, as far as they're concerned, if you're in a colony, you're just a barcode.
I was going to say that it might be realistic in the sense that, maybe if there really were space colonies, they would just be numbers. But I actually don't think that's true. I think they would treat it just like their town, right? Their city. They would give it a name.
Yeah, absolutely.
It actually just hurts the show because I couldn't tell you what colony was what. When they say, oh, it's L24, I'm not going to remember if that's the same as the other L1 that we heard 3 episodes before that.
Absolutely not. The only thing that I could tell was Wu Fei's colony because he's always at that dojo.
Oh, which, by the way, his master has like a terrible dub voice.
Yeah, I don't remember it being great, but fortunately we don't suffer for it long because he dies when they blow up their colony, right? That was the only colony that gets destroyed, I think.
Well, no, Catra shot down at least 2 colonies, right, in Wing Zero.
Did he?
Yeah, in the first half, for sure.
Oh, wait, one of them was like taken over by Oz, so it was technically empty, right? Except for Oz goons.
It could be, yeah.
Oh, God. We're in a Gundam series where the heroes destroy colonies.
Yeah, that was pretty sad. Poor Catra.
Now that I think about it, Oz and Romefeller and White Fang didn't destroy a single colony. They destroyed an asteroid, or at least part of an asteroid that Catra's dad was on, but they didn't destroy a single colony. To their credit.
Yeah, so maybe they weren't all that bad. Isaac, do you have like a best moment of the show?
Oh, wow.
Like, say something good about the show.
Okay. I'm glad you brought this up because I really didn't want to cover it. There's a lot of ideas here that I wish got refined better or executed better on. Like you mentioned, it was an interesting setting, secret mission. We don't really have vast armies going at it or huge fleets or anything like that. I think the philosophy and stuff that they really wanted to focus in on would have been really interesting if they executed it better, if they wrote it better. Again, I'm not sure if we're missing something that got lost in translation between Japanese and English. That's a possibility. Maybe we're not getting the weight of it or the coherence of it as much as we would if we watch this in Japan. So, yeah, that's what I think overall is good about it. Mobile suit designs, I think they're a weakness. The plot and writing as we got it is definitely a weakness. Another thing I noticed is we're a little super weapon dry compared to most Gundam series. I don't even count Barge as a super weapon really because that thing was so rarely used despite them having it for almost the entire show. Libra really shows up at the end as the main super weapon, but they test fire it. Other than that, we never see its full power, I think. So yeah, I'd summarize my thoughts as the good things about it are the ideas and what they could have been. What do you have to say, Brian?
I think the best part of the show for me was, again, when the Gundam boys were on Peace Million and they finally started to work together. There was one of the battles where Heroes held back and he's like, I have something to do. And then there was another battle after that. And it turned out that what he was doing was copying the Zero system. And he has Catra install it on the Sandrock so that Catra can glean enough data during the fight from the Zero system to give orders to the other Gundam boys to stay in some sort of formation so that they don't get their asses kicked against these Virgos. And I thought that was probably the best moment in the series because that's when the boys go from not being able to work together at all to working together very well. Catra conquers his fear of the Zero system, and it just felt like finally the 5 characters that you see on the cover of everything for the show were finally on one team, and they're not really before that. I think that was episode 44 or 45. So you watch 44 episodes without the 5 people on the cover being a team. You finally get that. So I thought that was good. And it was a good use of the Zero system, and I thought that was one of the episodes that felt the most Gundam of all, besides some of the ones at the end with Libra and whatnot. It also brought up another question, which I think we sort of talked about before, but
oh no.
Going back to the Gundam boys training at the colonies, were they never instructed in how to fight as a team? Like,
how could they, Brian? I mean, they all grew up separately. They didn't know of each other's existence, really. Well, I mean, they kind of have a vague idea there might be other pilots, but they never trained together.
But that could have been such a good plot point. They could have been taught generally how to fight in a team.
I suppose.
They could have all been taught the same general formations, and that would have been a good like learning exercise when they realize that, oh, they all know the same team strategies. They just have never talked to each other before. I don't know. It just bothers me that no instructions were given to them. I know the colonies couldn't talk to each other, but there's this thing called paper. You could have written things down.
I would say my favorite group of episodes, at least for being interesting, the Sanc Kindom episodes. Because not only do we see mobile dolls, which I thought were pretty cool, we got to see them in action some more, but we also get to see Relena finally in a position of authority, and it doesn't really go well. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, her and Dorothy kind of having their version of combat with each other, philosophical combat. It was interesting seeing these whole total pacifism ideas show up, and they really don't work, at least to an extent, I think. From a certain point of view, maybe you're like, well, by dissolving the Sanc Kindom, she kind of got it to work, because then she just gets absorbed into Romefeller, and she kind of rises to the leadership. But I don't know. I thought those were interesting episodes. Combat-wise, so many episodes were Leos being stomped, dolls being wiped out, that I don't think there was a lot of interesting combat per se. But the barge episode was interesting because we got to see the cool weapon and then they take down barge.
It was interesting that you bring up the Sanc Kindom episode because I agree that it was good that Relena was finally in power, and it was alarmingly quick that it doesn't go well for her total pacifism, because I think it's either in like the same episode or maybe the episode after where she's forced to decide whether or not to take in the Treize faction refugees and then be accused of, harboring guerrilla combatants, right? So it was pretty funny to see her philosophy kind of crumble, because she gave into the sympathetic, oh, it's fine, I'll take you in and we'll deal with the consequences later. Her total pacifism thing didn't really last all that long when push came to shove, I guess.
No, and the only reason at the end of the series they have peace is because there was enough fighting that they're able to establish peace. So I think Dermail is smiling in his grave.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yes, let's talk about the ending. Again, you and I are big on endings, and I think this is an ending that requires a lot of, did the show do enough to get you to believe the character's motivation for the actions they were taking at the end of the show? So my understanding of the ending is that Zechs switched sides and is waging this space versus Earth war to make everyone realize how bad war is so that they will all convert to total pacifism. And Treize is protecting Earth because Earth is basically already moving towards peace because Oz controls everything. Do you buy Zechs's take at the end, his opinion? I don't know. Did they do enough to convince you that makes sense? Like, how did we go from him in that bar having accomplished his goal to Zechs at the end?
I feel like Zechs's reasoning makes sense because he said that multiple times, right? Like at least twice. He wants the war to be so horrible that people do have peace afterwards, just out of a reaction to it. As for Treize fighting, is he kind of working off the same energy then? Is he like, well, I pretty much have to put all our weapons in a space so they get wiped out, and then we have no choice but for peace?
Yeah, and to your point, he kind of either knew he was going to die or let himself die because he gave the orders to Lady Un to destroy all their mobile suits after the battle was over, remember? And she's like, oh, yeah. that's what His Excellency ordered. So he'd clearly already told her that was the plan.
Okay, so to an extent, they're both working for Relena's dream.
Kinda, yeah. And I think Hero says that at the end somewhere. Doesn't he say, like, oh, they're both willing to sacrifice their lives for their goals, and I have no intention of stopping either of them, which I thought was actually pretty savage. But
I mean, technically, since they're both on the same page, they could have just negotiated to, like, stand down, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Couldn't they have just called him up and been like, hey, I think we should stop? Yeah, I agree. Okay. Yeah. And then, things over.
That would have been Relena's victory then at that point, that everybody willingly accepted total pacifism. There didn't even need to be a battle. That really would have subverted expectations. Dermail would have been spinning in his grave like, oh, God, they're really doing it.
Well, that was kind of what we got at the end, though, right? I mean, when Lady Un patched the feed of Wing Zero fighting Epyon to, like, everybody, to the colonies, to Earth.
Yeah.
I guess it's awful convenient now they can communicate live with everyone. But I guess the idea of that was, like, we're showing you that this battle is going on. I thought what she said made, like, no sense. Like, if you just actually listen to what she said. But also that, like, these people that she's showing this to, they have no idea who these mobile suits are. Like, Is that going to make any sense?
Not really. Like, it makes sense to us as the audience, but I agree with you. The stuff she was saying was like, when she's saying weird stuff like, "Can you feel it?
Yeah, it was so abstract.
Can you feel the desperation?" We're like, what?
Yeah.
For all people know, these are two mobile dolls like battling it out.
Right. Yeah.
People might not even know exactly what mobile dolls are or Gundams at this point. They just know that there's mobile suits fighting. They're controlled by different factions. If you're in a colony, you're kind of at the mercy of whoever's in power right now. And yeah, there's a red one. There's a burgundy one fighting a white one.
Right, and they don't know who's who.
Kind of going to your point, though, I guess in effect, you're right. The colonies kind of stepped forward, even though they really hadn't been involved too much as their own faction. They kind of step forward and say, White Fang doesn't represent us. We want peace. They even apologized, right?
They did, yeah. They apologized, but they apologized literally. I'm pretty sure as that piece was like breaking off. So it was kind of like, oh, we're really sorry, and I guess we're especially sorry about that extra piece that's breaking off.
That must have been intentional then. They're like, you know what? White Fang's gone, or at least enough of it's gone to matter. They knocked out the super weapon. We should probably sue for peace now.
Quit while we're ahead, basically.
Yeah, he's like, we're kind of on even terms with Earth right now. Let's just patch things up. We'll make a government. Relena's definitely going to be involved. We'll be okay.
Oh, Isaac. Okay, well, looking back on the series, did you have a favorite character?
Probably Tuberov.
Or are you just so exhausted from all of them that you don't have a favorite?
I definitely don't like any of the Gundam pilots. I think Treize kind of says too much for his own good. What I liked about Zechs was the whole kind of revenge arc. I kind of wish they doubled down on that. Relena, she was interesting if her ideas were communicated more effectively. And then again, a lot of the time she was just, on repeat.
Yeah.
Dorothy is very much a what could have been character. I'll double down and say I'll go with Tuberov.
Tuberov. Wow. That's such an Isaac pick.
Yeah, for being the mad genius that invented mobile dolls. Really, stuck to his gun throughout the whole series. Didn't go down like a coward, like Dermail even. Yeah, I'll go with Tuberov. I'll cosplay as Tuberov at the anime convention.
I think the mobile dolls are a fascinating idea that we haven't really seen much of in Gundam, unless I'm misspeaking. We definitely saw the mobile armor from Iron Blooded Orphanage, which was great. That was fantastic.
They're drones.
And in Crossbone Skullheart, we saw the Jupiter Gundam piloted by the Amuro Ray Data, which was good as well.
Yeah.
But mobile dolls in here were pretty boring overall.
Yeah, boring, but in our world of drones, they make so much logical sense that it was very much, of course, but in a series about giant robots and space opera, not the most engaging thing.
Right. Do you think that's because there were so many of them, or is that just the execution of this show?
I think it's because ultimately you don't get that dialogue between opponents that is the staple of every other Gundam series.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that was so absent in this series. I can kind of understand to an extent why. Maybe they didn't want their teenage leads essentially murdering grown men every episode.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so I'll say that. Who was your favorite character? I doubt it's Tuberov.
It was definitely Zechs in the beginning, or at least the first half when he was on the revenge plot. The second half, I'm not really sure. Second half Hero was a lot better than first half Hero, I can say that. If I had to pick one of the Gundam pilots, though, it was probably either Duo or Troa. I feel like Troa took a lot of initiative.
Really? I always thought Troa was so weird. Like his whole kind of mental split. I mean, who could blame him?
He was weird.
I wouldn't say he's my favorite character, but Duo was definitely the most likable of the Gundam pilots for being so normal and kind of even-headed. Catra also, the rest of them were just too high-strung, I thought. I'd rather hang out with Duo and Catra than I would Wu Fei or Troa or Hero.
Yeah, I agree. I like Noin a lot.
Yeah.
Noin was cool. Oh, my point on Noin, Isaac. Again, a really missed opportunity to have a female Gundam pilot. How many episodes in the back half, especially the last 10 episodes, did she fly around in a Taurus right next to 3 other Gundams? And did you not ask yourself, why does Noin not get a Gundam? couldn't she at least be using Wing Gundam or Unit 01?
There are also plenty of opportunities for her to get Epyon, right?
Or just anything. I mean, give her own Gundam.
Make one. Yeah, Gundam Peacecraft. I don't know. And she defends the Sanc Kindom. Who knows?
Yeah, or give her, another tall geese or something.
Yeah.
To elevate her a little bit above Mobile Doll.
I guess not.
So, actually, no, I do have a pick, Isaac. You know who the best character in the show is?
Oh, boy. Pagan?
No, it's not Pagan. It is, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
It's the narrator.
The narrator. He's got a cool voice, doesn't he?
He has a great voice, and he holds this House of Cards plot together. Because every episode, he recaps where the hell we are in this mess of political philosophizing.
He's got a cool voice. I really like it. They made a great pick. He might have been the best pick for a voice. Him and Zechs. Brian, in the first half of the series, when they're doing the opening narration, they're talking about how the United Earthsphere Alliance sees the colonies, and that shuttle's trying to escape the colony, and it gets shot by like a Leo. Do you think that was a civilian shuttle, or was that like filled with resistance members that were like trying to book it out of there?
My headcanon is it was resistance members.
Okay. So the Leo was justified.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Alliance never struck me as like war crimes Earth Federation from the Universal Century.
Okay. Oh, interesting. All right. I'll take it.
I'm not saying Mobile Dolls were like, morally great or anything, but they didn't go around gassing people.
Right.
Or using, nuclear weapons or
really any other super weapon, if you think about it.
Yeah. So you were less than impressed about Libra then?
Yeah, pretty much. It never felt like a threat until they fired the weapon, the beam cannon, the Libra cannon. Other than that, they never really even made a point of saying it could hold a ton of Mobile Dolls. Presumably it could, but I'm not a big Libra fan. It's okay, I guess.
I was so confused about Libra's size, Isaac, and Peace Million's size. Like, one thing, I didn't realize that Peace Million was almost as big as Libra until the very end.
Yeah, it's massive.
And then I don't understand how that makes sense. They say that Libra is a space station, but Peace Million is this ship that can, like, maneuver. Where's the line between station and ship?
No, they actually call Libra battleship, which drove me crazy, because I look at it and I'm like, this doesn't even look like a ship's design, right? It clearly looks like a battle station.
Yeah, but if it's just a ship, then it can't be that big to cause the damage that they're claiming it would cause.
Yeah, I think it was just poorly named in the writing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Headcanon, it's a station. It's bigger than Barge, and Barge was a space fortress. So,
right.
That should tell you everything.
Yeah. I guess for Libra and Peace Million, I mean, I thought they were okay in the plot. Libra at least has a distinct shape. Like, I'll never look at something else and not know what series it belongs to. I'll definitely be like, oh, that's Libra. And the same thing with Peace Million. Peace Million looks like a white stealth bomber.
Right.
What about the other mecha that we saw in the back half here, Isaac? The new stuff. I think we already talked about the Virgo 2s. We already talked about Death Scythe Hell. What about Ultron? Did you like Ultron?
No. Brian, I felt each of the new upgrades for the Gundams were just not enough to really differentiate them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't too pleased with them at all. And they're not on my list to buy.
I liked Ultron. I thought it was good. I do like the dragon arms, even though I think it's really hard to dragon arm like 100 Mobile Dolls to death, right? You need something a little more efficient than that.
Okay.
I feel like they all should just have Wings Buster Rifle.
Yeah, that would have taken the cake, right?
What about Tall Geese 2? You are a fan of the Tall Geese 2, though, right?
It's okay. It's an improvement over a lot of things we've seen, but I'd be more interested in buying it than a Leo, but that's not saying a lot.
I'll take it, listeners. I think that's a win from Isaac.
Sure.
And then what about Epyon? I mean, you had Epyon was one of your first models. Do you still have a soft spot in your heart for it?
Not really. I wouldn't buy an Epyon again. I'd rather buy a Virgo 1. That might be my top within Gundam Wing.
Okay.
And then after that, maybe a Virgo 2. Which is just like the Virgo 1.
So Virgo fan, but maybe not Epyon. I mean, people loved Epyon, and people still do love Epyon. Has that design just not aged well?
I don't think it's so much that. I think it's just maybe they cling to it because it was Zechs' mobile suit, and they're really saying, I like Zechs.
Okay.
Not necessarily I care much for the Epyon.
Got it.
Which is it's a two-trick pony, really. I mean, it's got the heat whip and then a beam saber, and that's it.
Yeah, there's no gun, which I don't really understand.
No.
Treize really to bed with that one.
I know, and then then he gets a Tallgeese too, and he made sure it had a gun.
Yeah, the Tallgeese's gun was great.
It was amazing. He's a Deadeye when he wants to be.
Isaac, what would you rate as the back half of Gundam Wing?
I'll say this, kind of going off your own thoughts a bit. We did see some better battles, some more interesting character interactions. We wish it was done better and differently. We wish the writing was more on point, but overall, it ends much as it was in the first half. A meandering sort of mess that was trying to say something. It never actually fully enunciated what it wanted to say. And as a result, we end up with a mediocre ending for a mediocre series. So for that reason, I give Gundam Wing, the second half, 2 out of 5 stars. Or Haros, I should say. 2 out of 5 Tuberovs. Brian, what do you give Gundam Wing, the second half?
Well, Isaac, I'm just going to refer back to my original paragraph summary. I do think that the back half of the show was more engaging than the first. I did notice on the wiki that apparently someone else directed the back half compared to the first half, so that could have something to do with it. I think the show has a lot of potential. The execution didn't do it for me. I fully appreciate its impact on the fandom and its importance. So if you're a Gundam Wing fan, more power to you. This one just wasn't for me, wasn't for Isaac. I think I'd give the back half a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
My beginning half was, I think, 4 out of 10, so I think I'll settle on the show overall as a 5 out of 10. Even though the back half was better, and maybe the back half could be like a 7 on a generous day. But I don't feel overall... Like, Isaac, we just watched 49 episodes of a show. That's a lot, right?
You're telling me. It felt like 100.
Well, some of them I did have to watch twice because I fell asleep and then I didn't know where I left off, so I had to rewatch part of it.
You heard it here, folks. It's that bad. It put Brian to sleep.
But yeah, I mean, I just don't feel very satisfied, I gotta be honest. So I'm not looking forward to Endless Waltz as much as I thought I would after watching the series, because I've seen Endless Waltz probably 6-7 times, Isaac. That was the only Gundam DVD I owned for a long time, so I just watched it over and over.
Oh my god, you have it on DVD? You poor soul.
I do, yeah. Well, because that was one of the only ones I could find on DVD.
You saw it at Suncoast and you grabbed it.
Damn right. You know what? And I didn't really know what it was, but I knew that it was cheaper than buying 10 DVDs of Gundam Wing. I could buy the cool movie with the cool holographic cover for the price of one DVD, so I got that one.
In Endless Waltz's defense, I'll say this. You'll probably enjoy it more, if only for the better animation.
Endless Waltz does have much nicer animation, and I think the designs are pretty cool in that one.
Yeah, some of them.
But you know what that DVD of Endless Waltz gave me, Isaac? And that's what Gundam Wing will have always given me.
Trailer to 0083.
Yeah, it is that little pamphlet that we talked about on our very first episode.
Oh.
That had all the UC mobile suits in it.
There you go. And it opened up the world.
Yes, so it introduced me to the world of Gundam. So for that, I have to be forever thankful to Gundam Wing. And I think any Gundam fan in America needs to be forever thankful to Gundam Wing, because that was the only reason that we got the other Gundam shows on TV.
You got me there. We thank you, Gundam Wing, for opening the door. We just wish it wasn't a creaky, rusted door.
So, listeners, I would be very curious to hear your thoughts on Gundam Wing, particularly from people who loved Gundam Wing back in the day and have recently rewatched it. Does it still hold up in your mind? Is it still one of your favorites? You know, what do you think? Are we being too harsh? Let us know, I guess.
Before we close, one thing I forgot to mention was I thought it was pretty funny how the engineers put a fatal flaw, or not a fatal flaw, but a pretty serious flaw into the Libra's cannon, and how each time they fire it, a team's going to have to repair it.
Oh, yeah, that was really funny. It was so weird, though, because the people on Libra, they clearly didn't know that something was wrong with it.
Well, I mean, it's White Fang. If it was Oz people, they probably would have kind of understood it, and maybe they even would have been able to repair it faster. But I'm sure White Fang kind of found out that it broke each time they fired it.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, yeah, that wraps up Gundam Wing. If you like it, please comment below. I'm really curious. Tell us what you like about the second half, characters, mobile suit designs, scenes, ideas. What do you like about it? Explain, elaborate.
All right, Isaac, take us away with a tuber off.
All right, everybody, before you go to sleep tonight, stand next to your bed. Put your hands together, get on your knees, look up at the ceiling, and hail the Romefeller Foundation.
Good night, everybody.